welcome to Does the Shoe Fit? I'm your host, Taylor, and today our guest speaker is Shannon. Shannon, go ahead and introduce yourself. What do you do?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Shannon Smith, and I am one of the mental health therapists here at L&B Counseling, and I'm also the clinical director for the company. So in terms of therapy, I work with all ages, but the age I love the most is teenage, young adult. And then one of my specialty areas that I love working with is trauma.
Yes.
So.
Okay. A little bit about me, because this is our first episode. My name is Taylor, and I'm also a clinician here, and I do the communications and culture coordinator for L&B Counseling. We have the same licensure. We are both LCMHC AHAs.
Yes.
And, we're bonded by that.
Yes. Yes, we are.
Everyone else is social workers here, so that's fun.
Yep.
And let's see, age-wise, like the things that I like, I also enjoy teenage. The age is just so fun to work with.
Their brains are so flexible.
It's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, I love the teenage age as well. I also do couples counseling, and that is my passion, is couples counseling. So we have different views of things, and so I think that'll be interesting, especially with our topic today. Yep. Which is the new Dahmer series on Netflix called Dahmer Monster, the Jeffery Dahmer Story.
Yes.
It's been big on Netflix right now.
It's been really big, and to put out first, Taylor and I are both huge crime murder podcast people.
Yep.
Some would say it's too far, but that's okay. It's fine. We obviously bond over it.
Maybe that's why we're therapists.
Yes,
I don't know.
Yes. But I think the big part of it is, like, we love diving into the minds of people and figuring out, like, maybe why things happened the way they happened.
And I think these are extremely interesting conversations, especially because Dahmer's timeline was in a time where we weren't talking about these things.
Yeah, not
so
at
a
all.
lot of it went misunderstood or not even discussed, and to look back, it's harder to distinguish some of these things from like a 20-year difference.
Yeah, that's so true.
Or even more than 20 years.
So true.
At this point, it is 2022.
Yeah. I mean, 70s and 80s, like, it was not normal to go to counseling.
No.
And honestly, that stigma still exists somewhat today, too, of, counseling is only for crazy people. We hate that word.
Right.
But you didn't go unless something was really wrong with you.
Right.
I love that it's so normalized today, but I wonder, like, if it was more normalized back then, how much more could have been caught, like, explored, talked about before all of this.
Like, the warning signs would have been more understood. I mean, just from his birth, from pregnancy on, there's just so many factors, and we'll definitely get into that in a couple of bullet points.
Yes, there's lots of stuff to dive into.
There's so much to go into, but first I think we wanted to talk about what's our overall thoughts on the show.
Yeah, well, I personally love Evan Peters.
Oh, yes.
So
Evan Peters, if you're out there.
Love you.
Huge fan.
Yep. He was all the way back in, like, Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide. I know.
Kills me.
But American Horror Story, he can play anything.
Oh, great actor.
From all the things that I've watched on Dahmer, I think Evan Peters portrayed him really, really well.
Yes.
That's the same vibe I've gotten from everything. Everyone that's ever portrayed him or talked about him.
Yep.
So.
And I've never watched the Dahmer tapes, and that's something I would like to do to kind of compare, but from the few scenes that I've seen, I feel like Evan Peters did a really great job of portraying who he was, like the monster that he was. And that's a tough role. Like, we've heard of other actors that play these tough roles really getting to them, and so I hope that doesn't happen to him.
Yeah, I've actually heard a lot about that. Like, people keep saying, like, I hope Evan's going to counseling to talk about having played this role and just, like, the emotional toll it takes to play something like that.
Right. And my only, like, thought, because he has done this before with American Horror Story and tends to play people like this, I think he probably has a good handle on it, and he understands it, but maybe the flip side is the more you do it, maybe the worse it gets.
Right.
So you could really go either way with that.
Right.
which is interesting.
You totally could. I think one of the other things that sticks out to me from the show is just how long he went undetected, and very much based on who he targeted, whether or not he targeted that knowing or not knowing area he lived in.
Right.
You know,
I don't think he knew. I don't think he did it on purpose.
Yeah, I don't want to say it was intentional, but
yeah.
Then again, I don't know.
But who knows? But I feel like he was pretty forthcoming in a lot of the interviews and stuff, and he never once said it was a hate crime.
Right.
I just think he knew that he could get away with it.
Right.
And maybe even, like, maybe he was attracted to those,
he totally could have been
specific, like, those people, and unfortunately that was his, like, if I'm attracted to you, I want to keep you forever.
Right.
And, like, that's not right.
And no, not at all. And the area that he lived in.
Right.
I mean, and
that was the people.
Yeah, he lived in, like, a really, really low income area, and that's what he was surrounded with. Unfortunately.
Right.
But yeah, there's definitely an injustice piece there.
For sure.
And you can see that in the series with, you know, the neighbor calling cops and cops not doing anything about it. And then also the cops, like, not wanting to go into the apartment because gay things.
Yep.
So, you know, then that stigma and whatnot.
Right. And it's funny because in the show, and I don't know how true this is, but in the show, Dahmer used that. He said, "Oh, it's just a gay thing. We're homosexuals," trying to get the police
them to not come in to
the
apartment,
which is insane, and it almost worked, or like at least in some circumstances when the most chilling and horrifying. And I knew since we're crime junkies, we've listened to podcasts and seen multiple movies and stuff, even though some of them are not true, about Jeffrey Dahmer. And so I knew about this specific, the 14-year-old who he claims was his boyfriend when it is clearly a child. And it breaks my heart. That scene was... It's so hard. I could honestly barely, watch it. It's
terrible to watch.
Tough.
Yeah.
Just really the cops did not do their job.
No.
At all.
No.
And that's, like, the pieces you're supposed to be protecting people.
Right.
That's your job.
Right. And I don't know how close, you know, this specific series is on portraying, you know, the consequences of the cops. Like, the end of the series, the cops, like, get reinstated. I don't know how true that is.
So
but dear God.
Yeah, so the show, I looked into that because I like to Google, like, what was true and what was not.
Yeah.
The show, I guess, portrays that they win, like, Officer of the Year, but that's not true.
Oh.
Yeah, so I think the show does that, and then what's actually true is they are reinstated in 94, and one of them goes on to be the, like, some high up in the union, the officers' union. So they do. And they got back pay. That's the thing that pissed me off the most. They got back pay.
Ooh, my blood's boiling over here.
So nothing happened. And that's so shitty.
Right. It's so awful.
Yeah.
So awful. Like, how did no one think this is not okay? Just even in that time frame. Yeah. Like, how did no one, you know, take a step back and say that's not okay?
I mean, a lot of it blows my mind, just even in general. Like, you protect humans. This is a human. Who cares what they look like or who they love or whatever that is? Like, that is a human being. Right. A 14-year-old human being. I mean, and all the other human beings, too, that could have been saved if the cops just listened.
If they had.
Yeah. Now, I will say, I think the character in the show, Glenda,
is that the neighbor? Yeah.
So she's actually a composite character that encompasses everyone in the building, but the Glenda...
Whoever called about?
Yeah. Okay. And then she's a real person, but she lived across the street.
Right.
In a different apartment.
Right.
But they kind of made a composite character, which makes sense to do that, to shove it all into one, just to have that kind of influence. But she was a real person.
Right.
But the show kind of added a lot to her with more of the composite of everybody.
Right. Of all of that.
Yeah.
Around there. She did an amazing job at playing that role too,
Yes.
like pulling in
Yes.
everything for sure. But yeah, just thinking about all the people that could have been saved from this. I mean, it's absolutely heartbreaking. And something, you know, I have been thinking about is like how did he get to be that way?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and as
the question of the year.
Yeah, the question of the year. I mean, as mental health therapists, like we do a lot of, you know, how did things develop?
Mm-hmm.
Thought patterns, behaviors, beliefs, all that kind of stuff. And then you can get into the conversation of nature versus nurture.
My favorite conversation, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah. So it's just like, what could have been different?
Mm-hmm. So, in terms of nature versus nurture, the way, and everyone has different opinions on it, I think it's coming more clearly not one, but like both directions. It's both, essentially. I think nature and nurture play a role. And I feel like that's more widely known by now.
Yeah.
Maybe not, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the way that it was explained to me growing up was that nature, it's like a deck of cards, and nature deals you your cards. So you're born with different cards, genetically, whatever that is.
It's a good way to describe it.
Different genetic predispositions. And then nature is what cards you play.
Right.
So the nature aspect is kind of what predispositions get played out.
Right.
So it is both.
Right.
Someone could be maybe born one way and have the perfect nature where these things don't necessarily happen, and then vice versa. Like, you could have these really good cards, but then the negative ones are played instead because of your nurture, and it's like, that's kind of how I've always seen that.
I think that's a really good way to describe it, like with the cards, you know, like the cards you're dealt kind of thing.
The cards you're dealt.
And what experiences make some of those cards stronger than others.
Yep.
I think from the series, you can definitely see both, like both things that he experienced.
Yep.
Very much so. And I mean, one of them just starting with his mom.
Yeah.
And you had said you looked into a little bit too, like, the drug use that was going on.
Yeah, I think I think that was true.
I think it was.
That she was on a lot of things while pregnant, and a lot of those things you're not on while pregnant anymore. So, I mean, think about...
Oh, that's a good point. Like, it was... I mean, people used to smoke while pregnant. Like, it wasn't... There wasn't a notion that said, don't do this.
Right.
You know? And so we have to take that into
I don't think it's her fault. They didn't know. And, like, doctors were telling her, yeah, this is fine. And, of course, like, if the doctors are telling you that, you're going to believe it.
Right.
So, to me, like, it was just just lack of knowledge in that area of how much prescriptions drugs can affect a fetal or a fetus in utero. Whatever those the names are.
Yeah.
But now we know. So looking back, it sucks because it's like, oh, you just want to don't do that. Like, don't take that. Don't, you know. And I know she suffered from things in general, which affected after he was born, how he was raised, and you know, you were saying some things about.
Yeah, I have read and fact checked this in multiple places that his mom didn't let anybody touch him like after he was born, as in like he never got skin to skin contact,
which is huge.
And again, people didn't know a whole lot about attachment styles back then. I mean, now we know how important it is for, you know, love and affection and skin to skin contact, like from birth, from day one. And I don't know if that includes like she didn't give him that, or if she wouldn't let other people
do that.
But either way, I mean, I think I tend to probably think that he didn't get it from her. Either.
That is the way.
Happened.
And that's the way the show kind of portrayed it too. And I know that there are things about the show that are not 100% true. So you got to take things with a grain of salt and look up, you know, the other things, and maybe not just Google it randomly, but fact check and really find...
Really do your research, guys.
Do the research. But essentially, from what the show goes and says, it did seem like there was tension in the family, regardless of specifically what it was. I'm assuming that is a truth, like a broad truth, that the family had some tension going on.
Yeah, like the instability between his parents.
Yes, and which probably was true given that they did divorce.
Right.
Or separate.
Right. They did.
So, yeah.
Yeah, a little big piece into that. I know the fact about him having a younger brother.
Oh, yeah. Wait, I know
true.
about that. Yep.
Yeah.
He changed his name.
Did he?
Yes.
I mean,
to be fair, I would too.
I get that. Do you know if the younger brother was that same parents? I think it was.
It was because yes.
Right.
It's his full blood
brother.
Younger brother, but I know that right away when all of it was kind of going down, he was a little bit older. I think he changed his name and basically tried to make a new life for himself and to get away from that. And it's actually kind of nice. In the show, they mention that he has a brother, and they really barely show the brother, so that I feel like they're trying to keep the integrity of true life him not wanting to be known.
Yeah, exactly. Again, like based on the series, I don't know how true this is, factually, but to me, it seemed like the younger brother got so much more attention and love and affection.
It did seem that way.
And I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah.
But I think it just goes into play of like, they're blood brothers, and one of them turned out one way, and one of them turned out the other.
Yep. Nature versus nurture.
Yeah, exactly. And when mom left, she took the younger brother, and told Jeffrey like, fend for yourself, basically. Right. Even though he was 17, clearly fending for himself didn't go too well. Shows we all need some boundaries and rules, everybody.
Yes. So yes, boundaries, rules, and if you're 17 or you're a teenager and you think you know things, you don't.
Yeah,
unfortunately,
we've been there. We get that.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, especially with him being, there's so many things in what they've shown him growing up where like boundaries and rules and things that he was fixated on weren't discussed like properly. And I think it's just one thing after another leading to like exploring further when it could have been caught earlier.
Something I picked up on is it's not that his dad didn't accept him. This is my view based on the show, like his sexual orientation, but his dad never addressed it. It was like always kind of talked around, and it was, pretty clear, at least the way they portrayed it in the show, but never talked about. And I mean, obviously that's still an issue today, but like, let's think back to then, way more of an issue. But we know, because we see clients all the time, how much it affects them to not have support, to not feel supported from their parents.
For sure, it's a huge
piece of it. So like I have to think that played a role too.
It must
so
have.
many things.
And it's like hiding is secret keeping, and I wonder if that also kind of played a role in like, well, if I'm keeping this secret, like maybe I can keep these other secrets, and if it's not talked about, like I don't know, like he knew something was wrong with him, but he never tried to stop it either.
Right.
And yeah, so it's just so interesting how it all plays a role, and it's just so unfortunate that it ended up helping him.
I know.
Like do more.
I know.
Which is horrible.
A lot of damage. And in the show they really portray like how terrible the dad, Lionel, feels like when he finds out everything. Like, what could I have done differently? Like, what did I not explore further? Like, I saw these things, and there was no education around any of that. Like, the term serial killer wasn't a term until like the 70s or 80s anyways. I'm pretty sure.
Somewhere.
If you watch Mindhunters, that's how they come up with it, and that was sometime in that time frame. I gotta double check that, but sometime around there. But like, there wasn't these things to know, signs to look out for. There wasn't this knowledge about it. Like, okay, maybe my kid's just like a little odd.
Right.
You know?
Right. But yeah, but it's still, even if it's like, okay, my kid's a little odd, you still have to like teach them how to be a human.
Right.
And I don't think he was taught how to be a human.
No.
And
No.
it's just I feel like this was a lot of nature and nurture together.
Yeah.
And like a lot of environmental factors, a lot of like fetus factors, a lot of different factors.
A lot of factors.
And it's like being an outsider even in high school. Like, no, he didn't have a lot of friends.
Yeah, he didn't.
And like that, so we are social creatures. Humans, we need to socialize. We need people
we need
contact. We need attachments. We need all these things. And he didn't have.
He didn't have that.
He didn't have guidance really from parents and or friends to understand what is right and wrong, and that's tough.
Right. It really is, and we see that so much now. I mean, just how much harder it is to get through like a school day when, like for our clients, when they don't feel like they have good friends, or they don't have someone to talk to, or they don't have a support system.
Yeah.
And I mean, we obviously know like how clearly that affects someone's mental health, you know?
Yeah. And it's to say, like, you know, as we talk about Dahmer as a kid, another podcast that I listen to likes to say, you know, I feel bad for the kid, but not the adult. So, like, I do feel bad for the kid who didn't ask for those things necessarily, but his actions as an adult, I do not feel bad for. That is his crimes. That is horrible.
Yeah.
But it's like I separate the two, kind of. Like, I feel bad for his upbringing, but once he's an adult and he knows what he's doing, I don't feel bad about that.
Right.
Like, in terms of him. I do feel bad for the victims, but not
the
killer.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point, actually.
I'm gonna lay that out there.
Yeah, that's a good point. It makes me think of, too, like, you know, 18 is, like, adult age. It's like, what's the difference between a 17 and 18-year-old?
Not much.
You know? Like, yeah, really not much. And so it's...
brain-wise, not much.
No, your brain is still very much developing until, what, 24? 26? Yeah, somewhere around there. Yeah. So, and, like, right around... That was his time. So...
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I know. So many different factors with this. I feel like we could honestly go on and on and on about it.
Yes, that is fair.
Clearly we're very passionate about all this kind of stuff.
Yes, it is very interesting.
It is. It really is.
Yes. We can move on to another topic.
Yeah.
Going back to basically the show in general, kind of looking at it as how it portrays Dahmer, and I think we've kind of said already that it is fairly accurate. There are some inaccuracies, of course, but it is, for the most part, the trials apparently were pretty accurate. That's what I read.
Yeah, I have read that too.
Especially the woman who, like, basically lunges at Dahmer, that was real.
Yeah,
I mean, to be fair, I totally understand that, and it would probably be real for me too.
Yeah, I think I'd have some outbursts.
Some words.
Yeah,
I'd have some words.
Choice words.
Choice words, yeah. But in terms of how it was filmed, I wanted to say my opinions. I feel like everyone I've talked to, like, loves this show, thinks it was so good, so interesting, and I don't know if it's because I have known the story of Dahmer. Like I've said, I've listened to podcasts about it before. I've done my own research into things. So I kind of knew what was going to happen. So to me, I kind of found it a little slow.
Yeah, it was a little.
It was a little slow. And the thing that I didn't like about it was, I understand with artistic, you know, whatever. They did it out of order. Chronologically.
It was confusing.
It's confusing. If you don't know and you're not writing down the years of what's going on, if you were to think back, do you know what his first crime was? Do you know what this third one was? Right? Like, you don't...
Right.
It doesn't give you a good, like...
Timeline
of it. I will say the first one was Stephen Hicks, the hitchhiker.
Right, and that was when he was, like, young.
Yeah. I think he was still in high school. Or 18?
Somewhere
or
around
something
there.
like that. Maybe he was 18.
I think, yeah. I remember that one, and then, do you know how much time lapsed between, like, that one and then...
I think it was not short. Like, it was a longer
Right, that's what I thought too.
time period.
Right.
He did stop for a little bit.
Right.
But
Which
again,
that's really
it was
interesting to me too, because just usually you do a serial killer would do one thing, and then it fuels them to do more, and they want to do more and more. And clearly that happened later on.
Right.
But it's like, how did he do the first one? Mm-hmm. And then
did he feel remorse?
Yo.
Did he feel guilt?
I know.
For like a brief second and then go right back?
Right.
So interesting.
Right. And clearly, I mean, he went into the military during that time, college, all that, and there was, stories about him.
He did do bad things in the military.
Right. Yeah. But there wasn't any, at least.
No, I think he did, like, tie somebody up and, like, do something.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was. If he, like, just beat him up or, like, tried to rape him. I can't remember exactly.
There was something.
There was something, and he was an alcoholic. That was a real...
that was really revving up.
Yeah.
During that time.
And I wonder if that was, substance use, right? A huge part of just...
They really do hit on that, too.
Yeah.
In the show.
Mm-hmm. Lowers your inhibitions. Mm-hmm. Like, you may do things that... I mean, think of anyone who gets drunk. You might do things that you don't normally do. Yeah. But for a serial killer, you may end up killing a lot of people. And a lot of times, he was intoxicated when he was killing people.
He was. Like, they very clearly show... when he was slipping something into someone's drink, like, he was drinking too.
He was drinking too.
Yeah.
And though maybe, slipping something in someone's drink is going to obviously make them be way worse, he still wasn't sober.
Right. No. He wasn't. I think there was even times where, at least it was portrayed in the show, that he, like, blacked out.
Yes.
And, like, woke up and was
real.
Like, what did I do? Whether that includes remorse, like, I don't know. But...
Right.
Still.
The hotel example now, I don't know if he actually accidentally drugged himself, if that was real.
I was wondering that too.
I couldn't figure that out when I was reading. I was like, did he, like, drug himself? Like, I don't know.
Right.
But the fact that he blacked out and woke up to the guy's chest being caved in, that was real. He didn't remember that, which is wild.
Oh my gosh, that was awful to see.
And that's also horrifying. Like, who do we know that we're just, like, walking past in life that freaks me out?
Yeah, has the capability
to do that.
To do something like that.
That's like, pretty wild.
You don't know what... I mean, we could even talk about, like, substances and, like, inducing psychotic features. Like, was that a factor? We don't...
wonder if it was.
Yeah.
Because he started drinking pretty early.
Mm-hmm. And that's,
And that's another thing. The earlier you do that, the more effect it has on your brain.
Right.
And, I mean, to be fair, he probably had some psychosis going on prior to that, but I wonder if it just, like, ramped it up, right? That nature versus nurture. It made it come out quicker. It made it worse.
Right. Again, like, the perfect storm.
The perfect storm, which is insane.
Right. Absolutely crazy.
But yes, going back to the chronological order of the show, that bothered me because I do like to think back and know, oh, that was the first scene, so that was his first kill, I would have rathered that, but I get why they did it the way they did to be more, like, interesting. Mm-hmm. And you can't please everybody. So, a lot of other people that I talked to loved it and disregarded that, but for me,
for you,
it bothered me.
Yeah. I feel like the only reason why it didn't bother me too much is because I knew the timeline more so.
Yeah.
But, like, so did you.
I did too.
Like,
but
it can go both
I would have liked to see it that way.
It was confusing.
Yeah.
I'll say that for sure.
Yeah.
I'm really interested with... We'll both have to watch the tapes.
Yes.
And then...
To see how that is.
To see how that is. Started it. But, so we'll have to do that.
Do another episode on the tapes.
Yeah, exactly. But, I mean, that's him.
That's
like,
him.
That's real in there. And so I would, love to see, like, how accurate is that based on other people that have portrayed him. You know, other series that have been about him.
That's true. That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
The other thing I did want to touch on is the silenced episode. Oh, that broke my heart.
Oh.
That was probably the hardest episode for me to watch.
Yeah. That was... chills, as Britt and Ashley would say from Crime Junkies, full body chills.
Full body chills.
That's what they say. Love them. But Yeah, absolutely gut-wrenching.
And and I've heard different things. There are different people say, oh, they did know each other for a while. And some people say, no, they didn't know each other for a while. And I think it's more of his family, Tony's family, saying that they didn't know each other. But at the same time, who knows how much Tony told them.
Right.
But they could have been great. Like, maybe they were super close and he did tell them everything, and that's true. So I don't know, but Tony's friends have said that they did know each other for a while. And it sucked because the way the show portrayed it, I was like, wow, this would be so cute if it wasn't a murderer doing this.
If he wasn't, like, grooming him.
Yeah.
Honestly. Like, I got, like, grooming vibes from that. And I feel like something has to be said about that was his only victim that he, like, had a relationship with.
Yeah.
You know? And yes, I know there's, like, different accounts on how long they knew each other. I wonder if the tapes will be more specific. Like, if he himself says what the relationship was like. But what was it about him?
Which makes me think, going back to what we said before, I think Jeffrey really did have romantic feelings for these people, and, like, he was attracted to these people. And to me, it's like, if it's a hate crime, you're not doing that.
No.
Necessarily.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so. Like, I've heard of a lot of other hate crimes, and it is not in that direction. It is much worse.
No.
So,
like, I think the romantic feelings really were there. Like, he was longing for that. It's just, like,
but now
was
he's a killer.
Not in the right direction. Like, I think, you know, it's easy to say, like, longing for, like the warmth of, like, a hug, like a cuddle, you know, whether it's a partner, parent, friend, like, whatever it is. Yep. But for him, it was just, like, it went past that. But I could see how he was longing for it. Yeah. You know?
And I wonder, and part of me thinks, what if they met earlier?
I know.
Like, what if he would have found that comfort in high school?
Oh my gosh.
You know what I mean?
So true.
If that would have changed anything, or would it have not
made it different?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have to believe it would have made some difference. I don't know what kind of difference, but I mean, just that, like, we know that attachment styles can change based on our experiences.
Yeah, they can grow.
So they can grow, they can develop. You know,
they can go negatively with trauma.
Yeah, they can go negatively. They can change positively. But what if he had met him sooner? What if that had been like an influential attachment style early on? I agree, though. I had that thought of, like, oh my God, like, they would have been really cute together.
Like, if it wasn't Jeffrey Dahmer, if someone who would have, and I don't know how true this part is, but they did show how Tony, oftentimes whenever he said, I'm deaf, or he would write down, I'm deaf, people would just walk away. That broke my heart. Oh, I hated that. Actually, I was like, I want to protect him so badly.
I know.
And I knew where it was going, because I, like, have heard, and I knew that this was one of his victims, but this poor guy, like, someone just gave him the time of the day, and it was a serial killer.
I know.
Like, how awful.
I know. And I wonder, too, if maybe if he had noticed, like, signs, you know, little red flags here and there, maybe it would have been harder for him to, like, act on those or to walk away, because there was this person who was paying him, like, attention. Right. And not walking away from him, and, like, not seeing him just for his disability. Right. You know?
So some of those red flags may have been overlooked.
Yeah.
And that's tough. Because being a relationship counselor too, I hear that all the time with people. So it's like, when you're involved, you don't see those red flags. They get overlooked sometimes. And, like, it's until you're able to take a step back, mainly when things dissolve and the relationship ends up, like, breaking up, then they look back and go, oh wow, those were a lot of red flags that I just did not notice, and I justified, and I made excuses for, and this could play a role here too. Like, maybe he was justifying some of it, making excuses for it because he liked him. Oh, that sucks.
I know it's really heartbreaking to think about, and, you know, pulling back into the injustice piece, like, you know, gay, African American, and a disability. Like, come on.
Yeah, that is And oh my gosh, and that just like makes my heart hurt even more.
I know.
Like
I
it just
know.
sucks.
I know.
But I know that the families of the victims have had some interesting thoughts about the show.
Yeah. I've heard and read some of that.
They're not a fan.
No, not a fan, which I definitely understand. I do think the show brings attention in a way of like, let's acknowledge what happened and bring attention, you know, for recognition of like of what happened. But I can see how it's bringing back up the trauma.
Yes.
And maybe putting out more details than the family would have wanted to be out there.
Right. Because I could see, like, you know, families, I mean, they probably haven't even moved on, right? Like, that trauma is so huge that it is really, really tough. And to put it back into the spotlight, to become so popular, to have to relive that, I get why that may not be great. And would probably not be fun and it would suck. But I mean, in terms of the show being made, I feel like it is a good thing because of they showed that social injustice piece. Like they didn't ignore it. They showed it. Right. And that's a really big concern, even like sometimes today even.
Oh yeah.
And so like
that needs to be hit on.
That needs to be hit on, and the names are public record.
They are.
Like, unfortunately, I get that this does make it more popular and it does bring it up, whereas maybe the families could have forgotten about it or tried to as best as they could, but it is public record, so if anyone did want to know, they could.
Yeah. And it's, you know, it's definitely been more than put out there.
Yeah, honestly, it's almost like Jeffrey not only took away their, like, sons, but also their, like, invisibility, their privacy. Like, being part of that takes away a lot of things.
Yeah, and especially when it's, like, a serial killer as prominent as
popular. Yeah.
And that's been talked about so much. But, I mean, I can't imagine, you know, this amount of time later, like, knowing that a series is coming out about, you know, like your brother or like your cousin. I mean, that's just, it's gut-wrenching.
Right. And I don't know if I heard that the show did not talk to the families.
That's what I heard too.
Of the victims. And so to not even know that a show is coming out and next thing you know, oh look, it's the #1 popular show on Netflix.
Yeah.
Oh, that's my kid that was killed. Or like that was my brother. That was my, you know, like that would be shocking.
Oh, for sure. And then the like the obsession with serial killers, which like were two of those people.
I know.
That feel that way.
Right.
And I think for me, it's like I want to dive into the mind of these people.
Yes.
But I also just find this stuff incredibly interesting. But you know, it's, you know, one of the top shows on Netflix right now, and you know, we're sitting here like we want to go watch the tapes that they, you know, and I can see it both ways, that like it's good to have the knowledge and the understanding, and I can see how for the families it's like, please don't romanticize this.
Yes.
You know, like like it's knowledge is one thing, but like obsessing and romanticizing and
making it like cool, like that's insane. Like should not be cool.
That's a very different part of it.
Right. And I think there's a line that needs to be in between those two things, and it gets blurred. There are people who obsess and go too far with it.
Freaking wrote Dahmer when he was in prison.
Yeah. I mean, this happens with all serial killers.
It does.
Which is insane.
It does.
Yeah. I guess he's not any less of that attention, which is wild to me. So.
Absolutely crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be interesting, like, when we talked about this, his brain, like, to be studied or not to be studied. And honestly, I don't know. Now, this is something I do not know about, but if he's dead, how much of the brain can you study without it being like
because we know we can do scans on alive brains and see different things popping off and what that means. You can see different scans of, I mean, different illnesses in brains, like different activity, but what would
And at that time, what would they have done?
Yeah.
Frozen it?
Yeah.
Let's wait 20 years until our technology's better. Because I don't
Yeah.
even know what they could have studied back then.
I don't know. And for
Maybe
anybody
something.
who doesn't know, and this is true facts, that his mom wanted the brain to be not cremated and wanted it to be kept to be studied on for science.
Mm-hmm.
And his dad said, no way. And there was a solid debate over it, and they ended up deciding not to keep it.
Yep.
But there's been talk about, like, what could we have learned from that? I don't know what we could have learned. I'm not a brain scientist.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's a whole nother realm for me.
Right.
But,
I'm not a dead brain scientist.
No, definitely not that either. But it's like, then how long would they have had to hold on to it?
Right.
Like, we're talking 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
40 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
where would it be? I don't know. But it's not around. So.
Yeah, so there's that piece too. It would be interesting. I wish there was more science behind that, like that we could test for the serial killer gene. Like, how interesting. Now, I don't think that is because we've talked about it's a lot of things. I don't think that's a thing.
Right. Right. There's not one gene.
There's not one gene.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting to kind of see if there is any similarities between brains. But I feel like there's not a lot of serial killer these days.
That we know about.
That is true. That is
we
true.
We could get into all of that too. I mean, science and, detective work is way, way, way better at this point.
Right.
But
I think they get caught earlier.
yeah, but nature versus nurture is still a thing. Social
Right.
injustice
Still a thing.
is still a thing. There are different, just different areas, like a impoverished area versus not, like whether or not, someone goes undetected,
Right.
like Dahmer did, in an
Right.
area like that. Like, those things still exist. But yes, grateful that the science is much stronger
Right.
these
To
days.
catch them sooner.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you're right. I think a big area in that is prostitution.
Oh, yeah.
I hear all the serial killers, all the knowledge, they target those groups because, they're lesser.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
No one's looking into it as much.
right, which sucks because
Yeah.
they are not lesser, they're humans.
Right, they're humans. They are humans. So.
Yes, exactly. Well, I feel like that was a good
Yeah.
topic on.
Yeah, I feel like it was.
I mean, we could literally.
No, we really could.
This.
We really could.
We could.
We really could.
We could.
Yeah.
We can go on forever about this topic.
And I'm sure we'll come back to it.
Yes.
Too.
I think it would be cool to come back to it, especially if we watch the tapes to see what that was like, how he was presented
Right.
himself without it being an actor.
Right.
That could be cool too.
It would also be cool if we could get feedback from our viewers to see, like, maybe what they want to know more about or dive further into.
Like, what topics within the Dahmer atmosphere would you like to know? And in that case, I'm going to create an email.
Perfect.
This was an idea I've had.
Yeah.
And if you have any questions or thoughts or whatever, email us. The email's in the show notes.
Yes.
So
Perfect.
I'll put those there so that you can contact us about topics.
Yeah.
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 So I guess overall, does the shoe fit? Yes or no? I mean, I don't even know what the shoe's fitting.
I know. What yeah.
Technically, I would say that... okay, let's say the show. Does the show portray it enough, like, accurately enough? Does the shoe fit?
I think it did a good job of portraying it.
I think so, too.
I do.
Now, of course, it's not perfect. So maybe there's like maybe an inch the shoe's squeezing.
Right.
The shoe
doesn't, like, perfectly fit, but it, like, fits.
It like fits enough.
Yeah.
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 We'll say that.
I would say so.
Okay.
Yes. A lot of it was pretty accurate. I think there was some good stuff we were able to point out that wasn't accurate.
Right.
And of course, we know, like, shows are gonna dramatize things for viewing purposes.
Right.
So, but I think considering that, they stayed pretty active to the facts.
Yep. I read that they used transcripts from the Dahmer tapes, essentially, or transcripts of the stuff that they used for the film or the show. So
yeah. Well, good.
It's close enough. So I'm going to say yes.
Yeah.
The shoe fits.
I would say so.
All right. Well,
I'd say the shoe fits.
Thank you for listening, and we'll be back
Yeah.
again.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Okay. Bye.